often there are discussions about the meaning of puja and the meaning of certain kinds of rituals that Indians perform. And it's a bit interesting perhaps for us to take a look at not so much some of these discussions, but what they reveal. In order to do so, however, let's first look at, let's say, a Catholic worship, Holy Mass in the Catholic Church. Now, there are very clear procedures for performing the worship, which is partly inherited by the Church as a tradition, which is partly also written in the Bible, in the New Testament Bible. And then, of course, there are strict limits of interpretation. For instance, during the Catholic Mass, the believers drink wine and eat hostie or bread. Now, there is the belief, and it's not important for us to know whether they're true or false. The believers think, or really do believe, that blood becomes wine and bread becomes the flesh of Christ. So there are limits to interpretations as to how and what actions mean, like drinking wine and eating hostie. When Indians discuss about puja, most of the times they want to put it in the same rigid framework of a performance like Catholic Mass. And they ask the question, why does one do a puja? Or why does one perform puja? Why does one perform japas, tapas, yajnas, homas? In other words, all these rituals. Now, Indians try to seek meaning behind it, or at least they do so when they enter into discussion with their friends from abroad in the United States or in Europe. And one of the most famous arguments is that you do the puja because you want to go to heaven and decide this or that book where it is said that performing this puja in this way or performing this ritual in that way will bring you to heaven. Yet others contest it because they say that it is very difficult to convince young people about the existence of heaven and why therefore is a puja necessary. Then yet others try and give symbolic interpretations to why perform puja and what could be the symbol. And all kinds of esoteric symbols are defined and esoteric meanings are given. Now, the point I want to make is, actually, all of these interpretations could be true, and equally true could be the following interpretation. For instance, while it could be true that it is said that some puja brings you to heaven, as, for instance, Gita tells you, one of the highest forms of worship is to perform a worship where you do distance, you take distance, you give up the fruit of the action or the goal of the action. That is, you perform a ritual because you want to attain a heaven, let's say, and at the same time, the highest form of worship is to give up that goal, is to renounce it. In other words, if you combine these two, which look like contradictions, they are not. What it merely says is that do just simply the ritual, not with any particular goal in mind, just do it. Now, this could also be equally justifiable interpretation. Now, what happens as a result? One group of people tell you a particular goal is a reason for a ritual. Another set of people will give you all kinds of symbolic interpretations of the ritual. And yet others could do the ritual with all kinds of other thoughts in their heads. And yet others may do it for no particular reason except for the reason that their parents or their grandparents or their ancestors did the same ritual as well, or did the same puja as well. So there is only one way we can allow these multiple interpretations to coexist. And the way chosen by modern intelligentsia of the last couple of decades has been to insist on one true, right, correct interpretation. And mostly it happens to be the symbolic ones. Now, this, of course, is a tendency which is enforced by and reinforced by an attempt to recreate Indian traditions in the form of Christian religions or Judaic religions or Islamic religions, where actually the Indian attitude is a very simple one. Just do the ritual. Is there any meaning? Well, it can have some meaning to some, no meaning to the others. In other words, ritual is something that is capable of being interpreted in any number of ways, or even not being interpreted at all. So if you ask in that sense, the question, why should I do Ganesh Puja? There's no answer. There's no goal, there's no meaning, and the goal and the meaning is what you give to it, if you feel like giving it to it. or you just do it because your father will get angry otherwise, that's a good reason to do the puja as well. In other words, to insist on some kind of a deep interpretation, symbolic or otherwise, is not something that we have learned from our Indian traditions, but something we have inherited from a half-understood Christian theology, which forces us to cast rituals in certain forms, namely as something that carries a deep meaning. Let me put it this way. Why do you work with a computer? Well, some people do it in order to read stories, watch videos, play games, listen to music, upload files, download movies, music, and so on. Write stories, as I said. In other words, there are any number of reasons why you work with a laptop, or it could also be because you want to show it off to your friends. Well, that is exactly how it is with rituals.